Hello internet! So, I held off on making this video until now because I wanted to wait for the first few Pro League playdays so that we can get some sort of basic idea for how this map might play out in a proper pro environment. And although Themepark has only been played sort of 3 or 4 times, I think it was played once between BDS and Chaos, once between Evil Geniuses and Reciprocity, and then I believe it was also played once or twice in the Japanese and Korean Pro League as well. I think we can start to see how the map, for the most part, is going to be played out. The core areas you're going to want to keep control of, so let's get straight into it. So our first bomb site we're taking a look at is the Throne Room and Armory site. Now, generally this site should probably be your first pick as a defender, and there's 2 reasons for that. First is because this site lacks a lot of verticality. The attackers can only really open up above the Armory site, meaning you can play pretty safely back inside of Throne Room and sort of hold both sites from one side. And secondly, all 3 of the breachable walls on the north, east, and west side, you can easily impact trick, or if you're playing a bandit or a Cade, you can trick them with those, so you can keep those walls closed pretty easily. So in general, your operator lineup for this site should be focused primarily around heavily anchoring on site, and as I said, you'll want to be bringing at least 1 set of impacts so you can trick the main 3 walls. A general lineup would probably have a Cade for his electro claws for at least 2 of the walls, as well as a bandit to protect the remaining walls, as well as for bandit tricking whichever walls you want, a Jaeger so you can catch all the projectiles if they're going to try and Zofia stun you off or use frag grenades to force you off of the reinforced walls, and then a Maestro / Echo, whichever one is unbanned, and your choice of probably either a Goyo or a Smoke. Both of these kind of fill the same role in delaying the attackers pushing through the doorways or the breachable walls that they end up opening to get into sight. So as we said, you'll ideally want to be hard anchoring in sight, aiming to keep the 6 reinforced walls shut. You can roam for the site, but you'll probably be better off playing in and around the Dragon maintenance rooms. You don't really want to be extending too far out, as the key for the site is being able to set up as many crossfires as you can once they get the walls open and start making an execute for sight. As well, you don't really want to be playing vertically on this site, as you'll find yourself very isolated and trapped by any of the attackers that end up inevitably pushing upstairs. One thing to note if you do want to roam is that you'll probably want to run a mute instead of a bandit so that you can use 1 jammer on the reinforced walls, and then you can use the other 3 mute jammers to help, whether you're running a Mozzie as your roamer or whoever. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. For the rest of the bomb sites on this map, they all seem to revolve around 1 room. The waiting room on the 2nd floor. For one, it's the biggest choke point on the map, so naturally, as a defender, you want to keep control over it, and this is particularly the case for our second bomb site, the bunk and daycare. So when you're defending bunk and daycare, you'll only really need 6 reinforcements on the site walls itself, the 4 that face cafe, and the 2 walls of bunk that connect to the initiation room, leaving you with 4 reinforcements for elsewhere. Now I think personally you're going to want to be using at least 2 reinforcements on the walls between office and cash room, leaving you with the last 2 reinforcements to be used on the initiation to electrical wall. These 4 extended reinforcements will allow you to play a lot more safely when you're defending inside the waiting room. So for a general lineup, I'd say primarily a Goyo is an incredible pick for this because his shield can be placed in and around the waiting room and the initiation rooms, just to assist holding those rooms even more. For your other 4 operators, I think you should be prioritizing information and utility denial of the attackers. So a mutant Mozzie will never hurt, likewise with a Jaeger and a Wamai. I don't really think that you need a hard breach denial like Cade and Bandit is super useful here, as you're not really playing to stop the attackers breaching the site. You're primarily defending the waiting room and sort of the cash office and initiation rooms to basically stall out as much time as possible and then fall back into site and set up your crossfires as they've got sort of the last minute remaining. Meaning that your final operators should probably be some kind of information ops, whether that's sort of an Echo or Maestro, or a Valkyrie is useful, or even a Pulse. I think we've seen have some success here, being able to play below around the yellow stairs and below the cash room. Now we get to the difficult sites, initiation and office, and the 1st floor drug lab. So the reasons that initiation is such a difficult bomb site are pretty much the same reasons that bunk and daycare is a good bomb site. And that's because, again, control of this bomb site revolves so heavily around controlling the waiting room. So to actually defend initiation, you'll need to extend out into bunk and daycare in much the same way as if you were actually defending bunk itself. The issue here though is that you've got one of 2 options with initiation. You either heavily invest in your off-site hold of bunk with a skeleton hold instead of initiation itself, the exact same way you would hold bunk and daycare, except with a few reinforcements swapped around, but then you're subject to easily losing office and initiation to a push from electrical and cash. Or you heavily invest into trying to open up the walls of cash room and sort of holding the east side more with a skeleton roam inside of bunk and daycare, but then obviously you risk easily giving up control of the waiting room once the attackers have west control, meaning that they can completely cut the bomb sites in two and easily invest into a plan on either of the bomb sites. So either way, it's going to be a tough one, and really up to each team to sort of figure out which works best for them. But regardless of how you choose to try and defend initiation, your lineup is going to look pretty similar, with key focuses on being able to delay as much of the attacker's time as possible. So as usual, the wombo combo of Mute and Mozzie is going to be super useful. You'll probably want to bring at least one hard breach denial op here though, but who you bring is really personal preference, whether it's Cade or Bandit or whoever. And then some kind of information op, whether that's a Maestro, an Echo, a Valkyrie, whoever you choose. And then one thing you'll want to prioritize is bringing at least one deployable shield, whether you choose to bring a Goyo and have his primary gadget, or you bring like a Smoke with a deployable shield or whoever, but you'll want to bring at least one deployable shield so that you can sit in the waiting room itself and defend the cash rooms to try and stall out the attacker's push. As one final note here though, if Mirror isn't banned, I think there's some pretty creative stuff you can do with her inside of the office. You can sort of set up on the office to cash walls with a mirror window looking into cash, and you can get some pretty good angles there to sort of hold off that east side of the map. So that's something to consider as well. Now, finally, we're on to the last bomb site of the map, Drug Lab, or the first floor lab as it's actually called now. And I'm just going to kind of brush over this site, as I personally don't think it's super viable. It's actually really the only bomb site on the map that I think plays out more vertically than it does horizontally, which introduces its own problems. And holding this site kind of plays out similar to the way you defend ventilation and workshop on border, by defending the bomb site below from above. In this case, you'll be aiming to hold bunk and daycare, shocker, I know, and trying to prevent any vertical play from cafe. As a defender, you can open up a ton of the floor around the arcade and the daycare to be able to hold the first floor bathroom, the drug hallways, barrels. You can hold basically the entire bomb site from above. However, the issues you could get with this hold are the same as the other sites on this map. If you're holding bunk, you need to be wary of attackers pushing through the waiting room from the east side of the map, but obviously if you're defending waiting room, you can't also hold your vertical pressure down below into the bomb site, so it generally ends up you have to split your forces too much, making it relatively easy for attackers to take map control. Now, you can try and play this site horizontally, aggressively holding the barrels and the arcade room down below, but again, if you lose the vertical pressure too early, it makes it really easy for attackers to get more map control again upstairs and sort of clear out all of the bomb site and get a plant down. Anyway, that about wraps up today's video. I hope you've learned a thing or two. If you have, make sure you hit that like rating down below and subscribe if you haven't already. As always, if you fancy, feel free to follow on all the socials and join the Discord full of awesome people like yourselves. Links for everything, as always, in the description below. And as always, have a great day.
Let's just rush backside.
5 seconds to go.
Donc vis upstairs.
Yes,
Okay,
Jaeger.
downstairs.
You found a bomb. Make your way to its location and defuse it.
On le piano.
Claymore deployed. You have located a bomb.
Reloading! One main lobby.
Last stop standing.
There we go.
Op 4 neutralized. Mission successful.